Hello and welcome to the Rhythm Changes podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernoff. This is episode 99. That's all I'm going to say. If you want to support what I do on this website and this podcast, which is really part of a network of podcasts right now, all the things that are going on, get the Subscriber Friday exclusive column that I write every Friday for the paying subscribers. Go to rhythmchanges.ca, sign up now, add your support. Thank you very much. All right. Well, some episodes are a long time in the making. This one definitely qualifies, but she has done so much music that this guest is someone who I have a lot of material for. And in some ways, I didn't even feel like I had to prepare anymore because I feel like I've been preparing for a couple of years to do this one. And we had a great time. So this is episode 99, and we're hitting it here at the Vancouver Public Library. Let's go. Let's do it. Our guest today is a trumpet player, also a bass player. I've heard many times on both instruments, a multi-instrumentalist. I've heard some synths as well. She plays in so many projects, including at the Jazzfest as a band leader, and there's much more coming up, but I've been fortunate enough to hear her so many times, not just in the last month or so, but over the last couple of years, see this evolution and this passion for the music I have a lot of respect for. So please welcome to Rhythm Changes podcast, Feven Kidane.
Hey, that's such a nice thing to say. Oh, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. It might get a little toasty in here at the library, but we'll deal with it.
We'll air it out.
So everybody does in our world so many different random things over the summer. You just had a busy Jazz Fest, which we'll talk about, but just looking at right now and like a little bit ahead, like what kind of season or time do you feel like you're in right now?
I feel like I'm in like a harvesting time, like little seeds that I've been planting over the years and things that I've been working on have been blooming, which has been really nice. I feel like I'm in a reciprocal time that the things that I have given, I'm getting back now, and it's kind of propelling me like a step forward. I feel like there's a bit of like I'm walking up the staircase kind of thing happening. So yeah, it's a good little momentum. It's a good little, I'm going up.
Yeah. Harvest is a good way to put it then. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So I had so much fun at your Jazz Fest show. So let's start there. But I only caught half of it because I saw Irreversible Entanglements right before. And then there were about 100 of us who all came out of Irreversible Entanglements and packed your show even further. There's a few things that I want to ask you about that show just because it was really interesting. You know, you had a sextet and then you also had some guests at the end. And maybe I'll start there, especially for the people who weren't there because they should know about how exciting it was. Like, who were those guests? How did you set that up? Talk about that part of it.
For sure. Okay, so on the vibes and doing some vocals, I had Cordelia Donovan. She's a fantastic musician. She's a really great singer and also a really great percussionist. She has a background in timpani even. Oh. And so she also plays vibes. And I wanted to play some Roy Ayers. I wanted like some groove. So she was my call. And coming up to do some cypher stuff, I had Missy D, who I play bass in her band. I'm playing with her today at the Surrey Fusion Fest.
Okay.
But yeah, I had her come up. I had Francesca Aluhu, who also goes by Femme du Lit. My French is so bad. They live in Seattle, and they're also in a band called Des Soul Exquisite. And then I had Gabriel Teodros, who's like he's like a Abyssinian Creole. He calls himself. He's like Ethiopian Creole rapper as well. Those two live down in the U.S. Those are like new connections that I've made through Kimmortal recently.
Oh, nice.
So yeah. I knew that I wanted to have a good hang, and Gabrielle had invited me and Kimmortal about 2 weeks before to go to something called an immigrant brunch. So we drove to Seattle and met like a lot of like rappers, singers, musicians, people that had like their like cultural backgrounds not from the U.S. or not from Canada, from me and Kim. A lot of them were Ethiopian, a lot of them were Black, like. It was really wonderful. And we were all like, it like the plan was just for us to like eat and hang. But it ended up with us being like, we can't speak our language, and like there's a home we long for, and like crying, and like we're so happy to have met everyone. And then we had a group chat, and I was like, and they were like, we want to come up and see your show, and I was like, okay, you want to play it?
Oh,
so it happened like that.
Yeah, was it like one big number at the end or like two numbers at the end? I forget. Yeah, it was the way you closed the show.
The last tune, yeah.
Yeah. So I heard set 2 basically, and I pretty much missed set 1. So what about the rest of what you played and your band? Can you talk about the rest of what you presented there?
Yeah. The rest of the first set was, I had some OGs I'd written in there. There was a song called City that I originally wrote for Brandon Wint. It was a commission for one of his poetry projects that'll be coming out soon.
Oh.
I wrote like 7 pieces, but I took that one back because we didn't end up using it, and I liked it a lot. Just think like, I don't know, like post bop meets like some Pharoah Sanders, like in his like Themby era, kinda.
Harvest time again. You're talking about Harvest.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of fits. So, what else? It was kind of like, it wasn't quite similar, but as the second set, the material did have range, but it had the similar kind of vibe as far as like the way that the 6 of us worked together, and like the call and response between all of us in between with each other was like a fluent language that we all spoke. So it was as if like you just came halfway through the hang.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you missed a good time, but you still got
but
the
it's still
hang.
good. Yeah, no, that's so true. That's a good point. That is what it felt like. Of course, you were on trumpet. John Nicholson, recent guest on sax.
Mm-hmm.
Biboye Onanuga, recent guest on drums.
Woo.
Nebu Johannes, old friend of mine, on trombone.
That's right.
Noah Franch Nolan on keys, which was cool. And Milo Johnson on bass, who I met for the first time there.
Hey! I'm so happy that you met him. He's so cool. Yeah. I recently met him in February because John had asked me on behalf of Milo to do a show of Milo's music that we did at La Fabrique. So I had just met him for rehearsals. I didn't even know who he was yet. He just moved back, I think in 2022 from Montreal, where he was for quite a long time. So
okay. Yeah, I want to learn more about his music too.
Dude, he can play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
electric and upright, which I also always appreciate.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Can you? I really appreciated what you said about not Roy Ayers but Roy Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share now what you said about Roy Brooks, and you played a tune from that reel to reel music seller album Understanding that came out.
I played 2 tunes.
2 tunes.
Yeah. Oh man, I love Roy Brooks. He's like my favorite drummer right now. Since the Understanding record came out, I was like, oh my God. Because Woody Shaw was the draw for me. Seeing that name, I was like, oh, I've got to hear this record. And I'm like, who's this guy? What I had said was that Roy Brooks was a, what was the exact word that I used?
It doesn't have to be exact.
He was done dirty by the mental health system. I believe he was from Detroit. And I believe he had bipolar disorder. And while he was a key player in that scene, playing with like Harold Mayburn as a band leader, as a session player, like really, really like top call. His health got the better of him, and services failed him, and he went to prison. And I believe he died there, just because his health was not great. And it's tough. Like the Black community and mental health is still recent conversation. So yeah, he was a victim of not getting the treatment that he deserved.
Yeah. That was a really meaningful thing for me to hear too, and for a lot of other people too, I'm sure. Even though I only intersect with part of it, definitely that illness is in my family to some extent, so I appreciated that.
Amen.
Yeah. That was one part of a multifaceted and what was overall a super fun show that also had some really meaningful moments. So I was happy to have caught that one. Yeah. What else did you do at the Jazzfest? Just off the top of my head, you did some different things, so I'm trying to remember them all as they're running through my brain. But talk about that whole week.
Yeah. After I played that show on the Saturday, on the Tuesday, after that, I played with Salience Network. So it was Kevin Romaine's band with John Nicholson and Jeff Gammon.
Yeah.
It's always fun to play like chordless because Jeff Gammon becomes chords.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh my God, bass chords, so cool. And then on the Saturday following that, I was with Dan Gaucher's quartet with Dan Howard. I love it. Dan and Dan. And Quincy Mays on piano. That was also really fun. I played my first Carla Bley tune on that gig.
That was the closing tune. I was there. That's right. Yeah, I heard both sets. You played Ila Lupino. Yeah.
Yeah, I got lost in that form, man. That was crazy. But for Salience Network, we played tunes from the record that he had just released.
Which you're on.
Yes. Yeah, which I'm on as well for some of the tunes. I love his writing. Oh, I got to mention. I played one of Kevin's songs on my own gig. Were you there for that? On the week before, on the Saturday? It might have been first.
Was that in your set one? But I know from Vivoye that you played How Can I Keep Singing, right?
That's right. We did play that. Yeah. And, people said they wept. So, Kevin, I know you're listening. Great songwriting. Great writing, man. Good tune.
I will continue to have fun with Kevin about that too, because now that you've come on, I've recently had the whole band except him on. So Jeff and John Nicholson, right?
He's coming up.
Yeah.
He'll have a lot to talk about too.
So yes, you're due, Kevin, and love that. That's one of my favorite records of last year. Period, for sure. Yeah, that was an amazing time. So those were your 3 Jazzfest hits.
That's
so
right.
I heard them all.
Yes. Hey, dude, #1 fan.
Okay, I'm happy about that. The Dan Gaucher thing was really cool too, and I enjoyed staying for both sets because I heard him so many times. I heard him probably more than John as well on sax. I heard so many times, but Dan Gaucher I heard so many times around the Jazzfest. I heard you do the Sun Ra show at Heroes Welcome. Aww. You won the costume contest, in my opinion. Your costume was awesome.
Yo, that was so fun.
Everybody's costuming was awesome. The house was packed.
It was.
Talk about that project. That was great.
Oh, man. Well, I think Dan emailed us maybe a couple months ago being like, would you guys be interested? And I was like, sure. We had a rehearsal about a week or so before, and I had met some people for the first time, like Colin Cowan. I didn't know him.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know most of the people there actually, and so it was nice to like meet some new folks. Well, obviously I knew Adrian and Gordy, and things like that. But yeah, it was great. We had the rehearsal, lots of electronics. I was like beep beep boop boop. Yeah, this is gonna be a good show. But it like totally changes when you're in rehearsal because you're like, oh yeah, I know what I gotta like shed and stuff. And then you get to the gig and then you see like it's packed and you're like, whoa, there's like the air gives you like, when you eat a good meal and you're like, just need salt, right? The salt is like the people that come to the show, just needs people. And then when you get people, it's like, yes, this meal is salted and I can finally sit and enjoy it while I eat it. So that's how the gig went. Yeah. It was so enjoyable. The fact that we all got bells and stuff, there wasn't any moment of silence. And that's exactly how Sun Ra would have wanted it, I think. So, yeah, great show. Everyone played so well. Yeah. And I really loved all the material that Dan chose. It really suited the band really well.
You did the walkout from the back of Heroes at the beginning. And then, you played like an uninterrupted concert, the whole way through.
Dude. Yeah. It felt like we weren't even in Vancouver for a minute.
I know you mean that in the best of ways.
Yeah.
I did the door for that show and it was crazy because I was in the room and it was empty other than you rehearsing with the band up until the last moment available. And then we opened the doors and everybody came in and then I turned around and there was no room left and it's just like boom.
Yeah.
It's like filled up instantly. That was wild.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It's always trippy when you hear that a show is sold out. I'm like, oh my God. Dan, you did it. Like,
playing this music, anything in this world that's not like pop or anything. Yeah, we can, totally. The fact that we can sell things out. I'm sure we'll talk about that more. We can talk about the scene and things like that in a bit. But there's so much I want to hear about your story and how you got here. I think it would be fun to go to Woody Shaw.
Oh, yeah.
Because you mentioned him in the context of Roy Brooks, of course. This is a trumpet player who's had an influence not just on you, but on so many people.
Yeah.
One of the all-time greats. When did you first come to discover and appreciate Woody Shaw? What was that like?
Dude, okay, shout out Brad Turner. There was a time that I had broken my phone in third year, I think, and Brad was the one who was teaching me up at Cap. I believe it was third year. And so I had like 6 months of no phone, and I was loving it. But you can't really listen to music without a phone or a subscription or something. And I think I had like my computer had just broken too. Like I was in sorry shape. I borrowed a laptop from the student union for like my third year. It was crazy. Anyway, and it was COVID, online school. It was wild.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think Brad was like, okay, you need to listen to music. And I have CD players. And so he gave me, and I still have it. Brad, I need to give it back to you. Sorry. You said it was a loan, but so far it's found a home. My bad. He gave me like a big binder full of CDs. And so I just trucked around my little portable CD player, and I was listening to almost all of them. And there was Woody Shaw's United was in there. And I didn't know this guy. And I was like, oh, cool. He has a trumpet and a little child in this cover that he's holding hands with or whatever. I was like, this is cool. And so I just like popped it in. And then I was like, oh my God, who is this guy? He like defies all laws of trumpet. Whoa. So that was the introduction. But, you know, it's kind of like when you hear something for the first time, really just makes you question, like, hold on. So there's like another way of doing this? Or there's like another way of thinking about it, or another way of rephrasing or recontextualizing something. And so that's kind of what Woody Shaw was to me, because I was still trying to figure out like what I wanted to sound like, with which now I have different opinions on what that whole conversation is supposed to be. But, you know, I had just like started my Clifford Brown learning and transcribing and stuff. So finding Woody while doing that was pretty crazy.
Huh. Okay. Because you just said a couple of seconds previously, you were like, oh, he challenged or he defied what you expected of him. So I was going to ask, well, what was already in your mind of what should be expected? But it sounds like maybe it was like Clifford Brown and like really straight up hard bop, bebop stuff before that, right? That
Pretty
you had
much
already been exposed to at Cap just in the couple of years before that.
That's right.
Okay. So Woody Shaw was like an extension of that, you know, made sense that it came out of there and then it took you to new places.
Yeah. Like I think we all have that experience in jazz school where it's like, okay, so this is how you play in rhythm, which, like, I'm not saying that we don't know that, but eighth notes are like what people want to do. And you don't have to do that, even though that's kind of how we're taught to at least start the learning doing. Sometimes Woody just wanted to see how many notes he could jam in 4 beats. Like, and some of it didn't line up with anything, but it still was like, what's that? And so it was like, oh, finally, there's an example of something different.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Did you go on to talk with Brad about like the influence that Woody might have had on him?
Did I?
I don't know. Because to me, he sounds like he comes out of that too.
Well, yes. And also I think that he also knew Victor Lewis. And Victor Lewis played with Woody Shaw. So there is actually a relationship. Yes, there is. I have a bad memory from COVID. It was crazy times. So I'm sure that it came up because I know that like I had done like a Woody Shaw transcription on my PMI, like my juries, and like we had spent a lot of time talking about him actually. So I know that Woody Shaw, anytime someone listens to him, they take a piece of him with them. Like that's just how it goes. Like it's like learning how to play the trumpet again. Like the first time you hear something that really blows you out of the water, you want to be more curious as to what that is, and it's going to have an impact on you. So absolutely it made an impact on him.
Yeah. There was one more thing you said in there that I wanted to ask you about. But I'm not sure if I got it right, because you said thinking about what you want to sound like, but then you said you're thinking in a new way about the conversation around that. Is that right? Is that what you were mentioning?
Yes,
yes. What did you mean by that?
I mean, now I think that, you know, when you think, oh, I want to sound like this, it kind of, for me, okay, I'll say for me. For me, and this isn't to like demean anyone or demean myself, but I think that when you say, oh, I want to sound like this, you are kind of ignoring what you already bring to the table a little bit. and you're not able to really find an identity. So when you say, I want to sound like this, it puts you one step below and you're not equal to what you want to sound like, instead of playing on your strengths and letting yourself find a voice.
Yeah, because that kind of hits on why it's reductive, right? Because like if you focused on trying to sound like Woody Shaw or something, like you would never get there. And so there's like a missing the forest for the trees kind of thing that you're saying, oh, eventually I have to let that go because it's not the right thing to like aim for.
Especially after leaving school and like kind of like adventuring into like other types of music and stuff like that as well with the trumpet. I remember me and Gordy were having a conversation and I was like, oh man, like ever since finishing school and like not really like on my like, I'm like a Woody Shaw fangirl type of thing. Like I feel like I don't sound the same. And I feel like I don't sound very good. And he was like, no, you sound better because you're like finding yourself.
Aw.
So there's like that.
That's great.
That comes from it, you know, like how if you really want to be like something, you're never going to be it because like, who are you then? And what do you bring to the table of the thing that you want to be like? Like, is it not more meaningful to be inspired by something and then recontextualize it for your own self? Like that's where it's at, really. And that's what an influence is.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure Woody would have had those influences too, right? And
Yeah,
he ended up
definitely.
being himself. But at some point, he probably did come across somebody like a Clifford Brown or a Lee Morgan or whatever that he would have been super inspired by.
Oh,
But then he ultimately goes on this journey that you're talking about, of course. Yeah.
Well, you know, have you heard Double Take?
But yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Meeting of the Minds with him and Freddie.
And then, there's a literal, across jazz, there's so many, literal, across all kinds of music, really. There's to look for those kind of passing of the torch or mentorship or intergenerational or whatever you call them. Yeah.
What's, I know that there are some, what's like a 2-bass record where you can kind of...
I mean, there's Ray Brown stuff that he did with multiple bass players. There's like Ray Brown and Christian McBride stuff in the 90s. So that's probably a big moment for Christian McBride, who ends up going off and being like so much of a different kind of departure from Ray Brown, but started off like that. I know this is a thing for like this is on a whole other side topic, but in the late 2000s, Jody Prosnick was always compared to Ray Brown really closely.
Really?
And like the swinging nature of her bass playing and how straight ahead and how kind of powerful it was when she put out that album Foundations. He was always super compared to Ray Brown. And by the artists who would visit the cellar, they would corroborate that, like the George Colemans and Russell Malone and stuff like that. Like the very first people I ever heard at the cellar when I started going to Corey Weeds' cellar in the early 2010s. But now Jody has gone on to do so many different things that you don't say that so much anymore because her playing has expanded into all these different worlds.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing to see, hey?
Yeah. Everybody can go on that journey.
Yeah.
I'll never forget about just over 2 years ago when things started to reopen again, when I was just kind of starting to do the gig list, I went to Pat's Pub. It was the first kind of reopened show at Pat's Pub when they were able to, and it was Thad Bailey Mai with David Blake, and they're playing again in August at Frankie's, and I'll be there, which that's one of the big events coming up. But Thad played this reopening gig at Pat's, and it might not have been the very first one, but it was the first one I went back to. I went there with Vez, and we sat down at this table, and this guy with a saxophone is walking around, and he's like, "Oh, can I sit with you?" Because there's like barely any seats left. And he sits down, and
Gordy?
Vez knows exactly what he said, but he said something like, my name's Gordy,
Yeah.
I'm 22, and I like anime or something like that. So that was the time when I met Gordy for the first time.
I love that guy.
When did you meet Gordy for the first time?
I met Gordy in first year at Cap. Oh, man. I just remember this guy sounding like when you put something on like 2.5 speed. And I was like, this dude is up my alley. I love this guy. But we got especially closer in second year, and we never were in a combo without each other after that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, he's like my right hand, and also we like have spent considerable time talking about like culture, diaspora, really meaningful things like that, like ethnicity, being like, you know, the children of immigrants and stuff, and like being raised here. Like, yeah, that dude's a soul brother for me, 100%.
You've had him in your bands. You know, you've had a band called Rush Hour that I heard at Tyrant and at the Jazzfest last year, right? So
Yeah.
that was also a fun project.
Dude, I love that project. I was thinking about it on my walk here.
You gonna run it back sometime soon?
We should. Gordy, hit me up. Let's do Rush Hour again. Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? I mean, I heard it, right? But for anyone who hasn't heard it, distinguish that project from, like, you know, what you were just talking about, what you played. What was it? Who's in it? What does it sound like? What was the concept? Because it's you and Gordy really kind of like co-led project.
Yeah, it's a 5-piece. It's myself, Swin Park, and Gordy on keys. Gordy brings his iwi. I have like a synthesizer. So does Swin. And then it was Cole Woodland on bass and Todd Stewart on the drums. I tried to roll my R's. It didn't work. Drums.
There you go.
And we were pretty much playing the music of like D&B, early 2000s. Like, we were really inspired by Machine Girl, 8-bit music, Super Nintendo, that kind of stuff. So it was definitely an electric project that was not quite jazz oriented as it was like Y2K oriented.
Yeah. There's like this sub scene now of people playing both video game music and anime music within the scene. And it's not like literally right there, but it's close to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting kind of engagement with that sort of thing.
Patrick Bartley.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I'm sure that's where a lot of the, you know, his popularity on YouTube and on social media has done a lot for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good. Sometimes people will bring up like what you would kind of crudely call like various influencers who inspire. You know, you can think about them as inspiring a lot of the things that happen right now, but I don't think his name has been brought up specifically yet. So that kind of sub scene is something I want to learn more about too. But I heard Rush Hour.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's interesting because the relationship between like jazz and anime and specifically Black and Asian cultures mixing together is really exciting, because you see even with Megan Thee Stallion's new album and her graphics and how she's been inspired by Japan, Thundercat as well, Patrick Bartley, and I'm sure there's more, but even the other way around, like, I've just heard the Samurai Champloo soundtrack for the first time, and I think it's pronounced Nujabes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like hip hop, but samurai, you know, like there's always been and then the Afro Samurai from, like, you've heard of him, right?
I don't think so. I mean, I know Nujabes very well, but no, I don't think so, no.
Afro Samurai was like, it was an anime, but also it was like based off a true story where there was like a black samurai in Japan in like feudal times.
Huh.
So yeah, you know, this relationship's pretty strong.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a lot there. And yeah, like you said, it goes both ways. And that's another exciting thing to look for when you engage with the music. You know, we talked about like mentorship links and where they literally show up in people, but when you look for like cross-cultural both ways and the effects, there's a lot to see there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's going to keep growing. You know, there's a lot of it right now. You know, you have the Cowboy Bebop band, and that can also sell out Heroes. And, you know, now they're selling out the VIF Center. So there's more coming there. Yeah, that's an exciting part of it.
It's a nice link that has lasted a long time.
Yeah. And of course, you know, the VIF Center, you did something pretty great there that I got to take in, the Max Roach show. You know, I've gotten a few different people's views on it, like Biboye's and John Nicholson's, and, you know, from when they were on this show.
Bebo was on this? I didn't even know.
Yeah, go check it out.
I have to.
I talked to him. Actually, I talked to him like within an hour of when you rehearsed your band with him. Yeah, he was rehearsing. This is all at Soundhouse Studios, right?
Yeah.
When this is not available, I go there sometimes.
Oh,
right,
I knew he was going after rehearsal. Yeah. Okay, cool.
So I recorded with him on that day. So it was after you rehearsed with him, and it was before he rehearsed his band there.
Oh, I gotta listen to that.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's like a recording sandwich.
Yeah, yeah, that was it. That was the only time it could possibly work. I tried to do an episode with him back in February when you did the Max Roach show, and didn't work out because of how tight his trip was. But, you know, I heard his After Dark, and I heard that. So I was very grateful that we got the chance to do it at the Jazzfest. But all that to say, I heard him talk a little bit about the show. I heard John very recently talk a little bit about it. But of course, I want to hear you talk about it. So And we can talk about Tim here too, and
Ayo.
how much, how much is there, that connection, that injection of energy and effort into the scene, right? But like, talk me through the whole Max Roach show story if you want, as much of it as you want, like from when you started Planet to how it felt when you actually were there and you did it.
Perfect.
But first, you got to take a cool sip of water so that you're ready.
I got a lot to say.
Yeah.
I only had 3 sips. It was quick though. Okay, so it starts off in either November or December. I think it was November of 2023 when Tim tells me that the Drum Also Waltzes has been released, the Max Roach documentary.
Yeah.
And that Viv wanted to do a screening of it for Black History Month. And wanted to work with his, production company, Infidelis Jazz, on kind of, branching in and bringing in the music community for that. So he hit me up and was like, hey, do you want to play this Max Roach show? And I was like, yes, I do. And I remember chatting about it with Nebu and thinking, like, I want to put together, like, a really good band for this. And, I was asked, like, oh, okay, like, you're going to do this. You're going to do stuff with Clifford. Like, you do. It's like, the reason okay, I'll get to that point in a second. But, yeah, I'm, like, ahead of myself in my own brain right now.
Right.
I was really excited because this year Max Roach turned 100 years old. So having it happen this year, it was supposed to be in January, but the timing didn't work out. So it worked out better in February. It was like a huge honor to be asked to do that and to be able to put together whatever I wanted and whatever I thought Max Roach meant to me, music-wise and material-wise for the show. Especially because I got to see the documentary, like I got a link, so I was able to watch it and pick material based off of what I thought would fit. But yes, I was asked if I was going to do Clifford Brown stuff, and like I pretty much learned trumpet on Clifford Brown stuff, and I was like, I can't do it like that.
It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah. So I was like, this is the Max Roach that everyone knows. But what is the Max Roach that people don't know? What's the Max Roach that I don't know? And what's the Max Roach that I do know? My favorite album is Percussion Bittersweet. It's Eric Dolphy and Booker's last album before they both die. And it was that Max Roach record. Abby Lincoln is my favorite vocalist. Like, she's on it, It's like so many people. And I loved that communal feeling on that album, and I wanted to channel that into bringing 6 people. I remember, like just chatting with Nebu, being like, what is the band going to look like? And then I remembered that I had Biboye on Facebook. We'd never met, though. And I was like, because I want to bring, I got to pick my words right. I want to bring the perspective of Max and my perspective in the band, kind of. I want to, like, Max is such a political person as well and lived through such an insane time in American history for, like, civil rights that I need my band to reflect that. So I did not play with my usual players, and so I got Bibo on the drums. Bella, amazing bass player. I've heard them play a few times, so I was like, I want Bella to play my gig. I had Quincy, Nebu was on that, John, myself, and then I had Yoro Nukusi come and play some percussion later on when we played some stuff from Percussion Bittersweet. But like Max being such a figure of freedom is a huge inspiration to me. Even like in the years leading up to doing that project, he had been one of my favorite, celebrities, if we want to call it like celebrity stand culture or whatever, like a role model for me on how to channel my feelings around the tumultuosity of the world and myself in it as a Black person into something creative and inspiring. Because being Black, it's very, very easy to be upset about things because of the way that we're treated, about the way that we are disregarded, and by the way that there's a lot of things that are against us in this world, and especially in past times. Like Max lived through like a difficult time too, right? And they even said in the documentary that he said if it wasn't drums, he would have picked up guns. Huh. And I have had that feeling, and I felt that way, like, but I had trumpet, you know? So it was really meaningful that I could play his music and thank him at the same time for what he's done for me. It started getting pretty high stakes for me when I saw that one of his sons had posted the event page in a Max Roach Facebook group, and I was like, "Oh my God, I can't mess this up." Yeah, Raoul Roach was like, "This is being done," and I was like, "Oh my God, that's my show!" Like, yeah, props to Tim for setting that all up. It sold out. It was a crazy show. Like, it was one of those things that, you know, Max was not only celebrated in the Black community as for being an artist, but also as like a community member. Like in the movie at the very end, when it's his funeral, like Maya Angelou is doing like the eulogy, says my brother Max, you know, he has like a relationship with more than just artists and all this. He's got, you know, community with like writers and actors, dancers, like, you know, everyday folk, and is like just a world citizen, you know, people of all races as well. And so it was nice to see people of all races at my show too, and people that weren't musicians that came, people that were poets and people that were writers and things like that. It's like, it just kind of told me I was doing something right, you know? Yeah, really grateful to Tim for asking me to do that. I could talk about this forever.
I mean, yeah, that's all right. That is literally all right.
Yeah, I'm just glad that it worked out that I could bring Bevo out, because I took well, I wouldn't say I took a risk with that one, but I didn't think I would, you know, I was like, oh, my pay is going to go to Bevo's flights. But, you know, Vivo, sorry. Viv, like came through and like helped me out with that and stuff. So it has, I think it's started a really great relationship between Edmonton and Vancouver, because that's where Bevo's from. And he's come out, you know, a few more times to come play shows, and he's like connecting with artists out here. Like he had Bella play on one of his gigs, and they met at that show that we did together. Like, yeah, that show was like my favorite show all year, tied with my sextet show. So, for the Jazz Festival. Yeah, that was a good show.
Yeah, because Vivoy and Bella played again at Heroes. Offsite from the Jazz Fest on the Sunday, and played with Dean. You know, he played with Dean, drums and piano, and they played Monk music, and I was there. It was great. And he brought one of his musicians from the Odario band to play saxophone, and so that's a cool kind of link up of, And then, you know, the Max Roach show kind of also, I can't remember if it was literally the first one. I have to look at the gig list archive, but like it really kind of leveled up the Infidels VIF relationship, and now there's so many more successful shows that are happening there, like the Erica Chow Blue Giant thing, the Cowboy Bebop band thing that we mentioned, the John Coltrane Blue Train Mike Allen thing that's coming later. Did
you get tickets?
Or a Blue World or something? No, I haven't got tickets. So it's probably sold.
I got tickets. Come, we'll sit together.
Yes, I gotta get on. It's funny how far in advance you got to get on those things now, which is great. I love that. I'm not gonna complain about that whatsoever.
Also, like, the fact that Infidels has booked Kokoroko.
Yep, in October, I think. Dude. Yeah, September or October. Yeah.
Like, it's going to, what's the word? What's this?
Elevate?
Yeah, thank you. I was like, my arm's going up. Like, what is that?
A hand on a rising trajectory,
Yes.
Yeah.
The trajectory is like, I'm starting to, it's like when an airplane's going so far that it's just a little
starting to take off.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've played as many Infidel shows as anybody. Like, you've played them all. You've played After Darks. You've played, like, New Thing at Tyrant Studios. Did you play a Lido show as a leader, or did you?
Not as a leader, but as a sideman.
You've played on them, You've played, like, a lot of the different Infidel series, like, and this is maybe more going away from from your own and talking about the scene too in general, but like how much has that meant to you that you're a very important kind of chapter in your development is running alongside like what he's doing and like what the Infidels part of the scene is doing?
I feel great about that. I love that. Tim has done a lot for me, and I have gained a lot of confidence in my abilities and my playing because he has given me so many opportunities to do that. I feel very lucky that my I guess we can call it career. My career,
yeah, sure, yeah,
yeah, like my career and my like playing history has been intertwined with somebody like him, who is like such an important and revered member of our scene in so many hats that he wears. I feel great about that. I think that like the two most important people that help me keep playing are him and Lisa K. Miller. For sure. I will always shout out those two.
Yeah. So what's your I mean, you show up and play in a lot of different configurations at 8 East then too, I guess. So what's your like Now Society, Lisa Miller relationship? What's that side of it been like for you?
Well, that was like, I wasn't really gigging much on trumpet for my own stuff when I was still in school until around COVID time. I think I might have had one 2019 show or something like that before. But it's like I had a different reputation even going before Cap as like a bass player. Because that was my main instrument for a number of years. Because I shelved trumpet after high school. I was like, yeah, I can still play it, whatever. And I was a bass player. And I played a lot in like the hip hop scene. And that was kind of what I was doing. So when I went to Cap, and I was like, I'm going to go on trumpet because I'm not very good at it anymore. And then COVID happened. I got so depressed. I've been living alone for 5 years through the pandemic. And like with like BLM 2020 summer when you're living alone. Oh my God. It was so bad. The way that Lisa and I had met was I got commissioned to do, I forgot what the exact term was, but Isolation Commission was what it was called. It was a project. Yeah. And I didn't really know much about improvising and like free music like that. So I thought I had to write something. So I started writing something and then I just kept scrapping it. I never finished. And then I like kept delaying handing this thing in. And Lisa was the one who commissioned me. And I was like, after like several weeks, I was like, hey, listen, I'm like too depressed to do this. And she was like, that's okay. Here's the money. Do you want to play at 8 East with me? And I was like, sure. Because I didn't know her.
And you've probably never been to 8 East.
No, I had gone past it and I had heard about it from Brad, actually. So I knew it existed, but I didn't really know anything about what goes on there aside from free jazz. You know what I mean? Which I've always been a fan of. But yeah, it was like, she kind of like my mental health at the time was very isolationist because I felt like misunderstood by the world after George Floyd and all that stuff. Well, I always have felt misunderstood just for different reasons and also for being Black and things like that. But that was like, I couldn't run from it at that time because it was like on everyone's mind and everyone was always talking about it. It was like, oh God, like this is like the Blackest I've ever been kind of, you know? But she pretty much picked me up and put me in a community. She was like, here you go. So it really did. I probably would have, not been here to this extent, or I would have been maybe years from now or something like that if it wasn't for her as well.
Yeah. These kind of figures and the generous kind of welcome moments. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're important. Yeah. And now, you're such a staunch person in both the Infidels and the Now 8 East world. You're regularly there with both, and you're every given month, you're meeting some new people through there. You're deepening. Like you were talking about how one of the only people you knew at the Sun Ra show was like Adrian Avendano on one of the 2 drum sets, right? Mm-hmm. You probably see him a lot down there.
Oh yeah, tons. But I also knew him before I went to Cap because oh man, it was like an old roommate of mine was really close with Danny Hernandez Pinto, who's the bass player for Empanadas now. Well, he has been the whole time. And like his crew of friends, Adrian's in that crew.
Yeah.
So I've known Adrian for like 6 or 7 years actually. But yeah. It's nice. Yeah, I only knew maybe like 4 or 5 people. Like Lyra, obviously I knew her.
This is at the Sun Ra show. Yeah.
She was playing flute, and then Gordy, Adrian,
Dan, of course. So there you got the
Dan.
drummers. Yeah. You were saying Colin Cowan you didn't know because maybe you didn't go to the China Cloud. I
have never been to China Cloud.
I guess that's a slightly different era.
Yeah. I knew it existed though. I know some people that are like associated, but I've never been in it. And the first time I went was to do that Sun Ra rehearsal.
Okay. Yes. Right. Okay. Cool. That makes sense. So there used to be a good amount of jazz there when there weren't as certain other things going on, you know, or there used to be, that used to be a place that took in stuff from our scene. Like David Blake, when he released his first album in 2013, he did it there.
Really?
Yeah. I think his band was it was actually, that's funny because his band on that is a guitar trio album, and his band was Winston on bass, and it was Dan Gaucher on drums.
Oh, that's so sick.
They did a release concert at the. I know you're listening, David, so we'll remember that together. Yeah, the China Cloud. There used to be some projects that happened there. Yeah. Now that gets me kind of curious about, you know, because that's a different time. I'm a few years older than you for sure, so like I want to learn more about your time through that. I want to learn more about some of these other things that you mentioned, because I kind of was absent from the community until I started doing the gig list and rhythm changes stuff really in like 2022-ish until things started reopening again. So like the pre-COVID thing, there's a lot of people where, you know, and like when I met Gordy around that time too, there's a lot of people who I met around that time and who I didn't know anything about before. So I don't really know where to start. This is like your upbringing too, and then maybe like your musical education too. But just upbringing in general. Doesn't have to focus on music. Like take me all the way back, because I know nothing about like, you know, when you were a kid, or like how music became such a big part of your life or anything.
True.
Like take me all the way back.
All right. Well, I was born a little baby on October 9th, 1997. So I think you're 4 years older than I am. I was born in Vancouver, but I was raised in Walnut Grove in Langley. Dude.
This is something else you have in common with Brad Turner.
Yeah, because he went to the school right over the overpass at RU Mountain. It's so interesting because when I listen back to the music of my youth, which is like 80s Rolling Stones and like Rat and like
hair metal.
Yeah. And like, oh man, what else? Like
Poison.
There was a little bit of that, like Lou Reed and stuff like that.
So it's not all hair metal. Yeah, gotcha.
Just like David Bowie and Duran Duran, and I'm just like, where did
80s music?
I loved it. I loved it so much, but I was even recommending, like, you should listen to these Rolling Stones albums and stuff to my partner yesterday, and I was like, hold on. I listened to them today. I was like, this is like 3 steps away from like country, like Langley, man, Langley.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. But I, you know, went through elementary school band, as we all do.
Trumpet or bass, though?
Clarinet.
Clarinet? Oh, I didn't know that.
I can still do it. I can still do it, too, just a little bit. I did that for the first year, but, you know, everyone wants to play saxophone. I was one of those kids. There wasn't any saxes, and I didn't want my mom to rent one. So I just played clarinet because it was right there. Got pretty good at it. Actually really liked it. Sped run a few of the Essential Elements books that year. And then, you know, I was always like, the trumpets play cool stuff. Like clarinets are just like over here doing whatever. And then trumpets were like, you know, and I was like, I want to do that. And they seemed like they were having a lot of fun because I don't really know how liked I was by the clarinet section. Everyone was kind of like, they weren't quite bookish or nerdy or anything, but they're all quiet, and I'm not a quiet person, really. So I thought, you know, I want to talk to people next to me instead of annoying them because I'm talking next to them. I should switch instruments. Also, it was only dudes, and I was like, I could play trumpet, too, and I could sound better than them. And I probably had a crush on a few of them, too, because I was 10. So I swapped to trumpet for grade 6, and I stuck with it. I even had my elementary school best friend in our grade 7 year swapped from sax to trumpet because she wanted to be just like me. That was so cute.
Oh.
And then she didn't like it, so she swapped back. But
you stayed.
I stayed. And then high school came around, and I played it for the jazz band. I played bass clarinet in concert band. And then when 10th grade rolled around, I joined the vocal jazz group as the bass player. So I was just doing those three. It was fun. And I was in choir and stuff too. I don't know. I always wanted to be a musician since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
That's kind of all I wanted to do. Yeah. And so, you know, at this point, too late to change careers, but I'm pretty happy about what I've done. So then after I graduated high school, here's a secret. Here's a secret for you.
Something new.
Okay, some people already know. I went to Bible college for a year because I was a Christian. I was a Pentecostal Christian my whole life, out of choice. And so
your family was as well, or you entered it?
They weren't really.
Okay.
Like they said they were, but they never went to church. Like my mom, like my parents had me baptized in like the Ethiopian Orthodox Church as a child, and then when my mom remarried, it was like a Pentecostal family.
Okay.
But my cousins and aunt are way more religious than my parents were at home. So I was like, yeah, let me go to church. You know, why not? And I was like, this is kind of cool.
You were how old at this time?
I was like 11.
Okay, yes,
like,
around that time.
Cool. I get to do like VBS during the summers, like little Bible camp for a week.
What does that stand for? Vancouver Bible School?
Vacation Bible School.
Oh.
This is in Langley still.
Okay.
Yeah, this is in Port Kells to be specific.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was like, I should go to Bible school and be a missionary. What? Bad choice. Anyway, I did it. I got kicked out.
You got kicked out?
I got kicked out. Well, I didn't finish the year and I failed a few classes. I wasn't a very good student, though. I never really was until I started at CAP. It was the only time I had ever gone through school without failing a class. I failed a class every year of high school. I failed like 3 classes in Bible college for the year. Moved to Vancouver when everyone went to go do the missions trip in Thailand because they told me I couldn't go. So I moved to Vancouver. It's okay. It's
You're well beyond it at this point. So
yeah, it's like there's a specific thing about people who like go through Bible school and then they leave it or they get kicked out of it. Like there was a few of us that got kicked out. And then later on we're like, hold on, that was a cult. Why am I living on campus with all of my teachers? Like, how come I have professors knocking on my door because I'm sleeping through chapel? Like,
yeah, there's some weird aspects to it.
And it's mandatory to live on campus as a first year. Like, it's a cult. But I'll leave it there. Anyway.
So that was like that was your first year out of high school. You were like 18 or something. Yeah. Wow.
I was like, I want to go to Bible college because I don't think God wants me to study music. Whatever that means. I don't know. That didn't make any sense because that's all I wanted to do. But church, man, don't follow the people that tell you that you shouldn't do something. Follow the feeling inside of you that says you should do it, because I didn't. And I followed what people told me, and they said, well, if God says you have to get like a student loan and stuff, that probably isn't meant for you to go to Bible school, is it? Or to go to music school. I was like, you're probably right. It should be easy. You're right. But interestingly enough, I got a funny type of scholarship. It wasn't through CAP, but it was a different kind of scholarship that was a full ride scholarship. So I guess it all worked out and they were accidentally right, because when I went to CAP, I didn't pay. So they weren't quite wrong. They weren't quite right either. But I went to CAP when I was 21. In the years prior to that, from 18 to 21, I was living here in Vancouver, and I had been looped into like the hip hop cypher rap scene and stuff. And I don't really rap. I feel like everybody can kind of rap,
or has experimented or dabbled. Yeah,
but I never did. I never experimented. Okay. I never wrote raps and said them in the mirror, nothing like that. I missed out. But I was like, I can play bass. I'll be your bass player instead. So that was my ticket in, and it was great. And I made a lot of friends, friends that I still have connection with now. which is really nice. That's where I met Johnny Tobin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we were roommates at one point.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. I wonder, because I've known him for so long, and there's been times where it's been a long time since we saw each other in the middle time period. But I mean, I remember when I met him, I was, I think I was 15, and it was, I played this wedding gig with him and with a couple other people, and he had hair. He'll be okay. And I've been friends with him for a long time, and I really appreciate so much of what he does. But no, I don't recall that there was ever that connection. That's a cool timing thing that would happen in there.
And it was so funny because our first conversation was at this weekly hip hop cipher that we would go to, and it was about how we were raised religious. And
yes,
so
right, okay.
that became a connective point, and we've been friends ever since. So that was cool. Funny how life experiences bring you closer to people, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, when I was 21, I was like, you know what? Like, I should probably learn to play music again, because I wasn't playing trumpet really. I was playing bass, and I knew that I had a lot of gaps in my knowledge of music, and I wanted to just get better. Especially because I was like pretty serious about music, like I always kind of have been. And so I was like, I should go. And then I looked at the CAP website and saw that it was, what was it? That auditions ended in like 3 days. And I was like, it was like the end of May. And I was like, oh, shit. So I was like, and I was working. It was like a weekend. So it was like, I read that on Friday when I was at work. I worked Saturday, Sunday, and then I think my audition was on a Monday.
Where were you working at the?
I was working at a tea shop on Commercial Drive back in the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I read that and I was like, that's crazy. And then I had 24 hours because of the amount that I had to work. I had 24 hours to prepare for this audition, and I was like. I just remember practicing on the roof of my Main Street apartment because it was like a big building cut into 4 suites, and there was like maybe 15 of us or something that like lived there. And I was like, okay, it's gonna bug everybody. So I'm just gonna go on the roof and practice my trumpet and like write out my scales with the worst end harmonics you've ever seen, like flats and sharps in the same key. Because I knew nothing. Anyway, I got in. So then I went to CAP.
Who auditioned you?
It was Dennis and Steve.
Classic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just remember Dennis being like, she sounded really good studying with Brad. And I was like, does this mean I'm in? Like, I was like, I need to know right now if I'm in. And they're like, sure, yeah. And I was like, cool. So that's how it happened.
Yeah. Okay. So this was like 2018 or 19.
Yeah. 2018.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the COVID CAP experience, which I don't know anything about, of course, but like that started for you. You were already kind of into it a year or two.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that was like at the midpoint of it, then the rest of it kind of became like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then probably right around the time you were finishing up, then that was when the scene came alive again, and when I ended up hearing you for the first time, and you were coming straight out of it, and it was kind of the end of your time there, it sounds like.
Yeah. COVID school was interesting. I got the best grades of my life during that time.
Okay.
I got like 2 or 3 dean's lists.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. Don't look too hard into that statement though. Yeah, it was strange because when we had A band rehearsals and like big band classes, like we'd have to have one section doing sectionals because it was over capacity in the room to be 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, they made us put on masks while playing trumpet. So we had to like cut holes, and it was just getting like spit everywhere. We had to cover the end of our bells with masks and like coverings.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was kind of freaky, And then there was that meme going around, that meme of the sax player playing in like one of those like self-contained like tent bubble things.
Yeah.
And we were like, I was like, should I get one? Like, should we all get one of those so we can all play together? Like, yeah, it was an interesting time, but made it through.
Yeah.
We made it.
I'm trying to think of the first place I ever heard you play. Honestly, it was probably at the Tangent, which is cool because that's like a link back to my era of a few years before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't remember who you played with necessarily.
You did an article on that, right?
Yes, that's why I can remember it.
It was Dan Howard.
Oh.
Todd.
Yeah.
And who was on keys?
Because you said for the occasion of the Max Roach show, you were like, oh, for this occasion and for what this show demanded, I didn't bring my longtime players. And it's like, I know, I kind of know who that is. Like, and it's not just one person on each instrument. It's like Cole Woodland on bass, who you mentioned. Yep. Obviously, Todd on drums is a big one. Yep. Obviously, Gordy on sax is a big one.
Yeah.
So and then there's a bunch of other people in there too, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Dan Howard, that's right, would have been on bass. But it was cool that I got to hear you there. Because that's another kind of Aero Link moment too. And the Tangent was not long after that, you know?
Yeah. When was your first Tangent show?
That I played?
Yeah.
Oh boy. You know, I actually didn't play very many. I certainly attended a lot. I went to the first Wednesday night. I just had Eli and Millie in here, and we talked about that because they played that one. Mm-hmm. I played with this vocalist, Megan Gillespie.
Oh, I've heard of her.
Yeah, who is based out east now and is on faculty, but was and then there's Nebu too. So Nebu and Madeline Elkins and me and Megan, we all went to high school together. And Megan was the first one of us who went to Cap and kind of told us about how great it was. And then Nebu came, you know, and he ended up going to Humber too. And that's a whole other story that is up to him. But, you know, that was our kind of New West crew who went to Cap. So I played there with Megan once, probably 2014 or 15 or so. That would have been
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was out. Then I didn't come back to the scene until like COVID. So
why was that?
It wasn't necessarily for bad reasons. It was because it's funny. I was going to ask you about this too. So you said you ended up at CAP when you were around 21.
Yep.
I've talked on this show about how and you graduated.
Yep.
Yeah. And I didn't, obviously. I felt like I went there when I was 17. And I felt like I could have made it if, among many other factors, if I was maybe like 20 or 21.
Yeah.
And that age, maturity, life experience, social element of it was, I had a lot to do between 17 and 21. And I feel like it was very unsuccessful for me because of that and other things when I was like 17 or 18. And that's why I only made it the 1 year.
Yeah.
And in another universe, if I had gone at 21, then maybe it could have been better. Now, I did try to go to the university again later when I was around that age, and it also didn't work. So that could be total BS,
enough.
but
I don't think it's BS,
I've framed it that way. But
Yeah.
I was gonna bring that up because it sounds like for you, I know you asked me why I left the scene. I'll get back to that.
Mm-hmm.
But for you, and you're talking about like your Bible college experience and stuff, it sounds like you also, and a lot of people do at that age, of course, that's the age when that happens, but you also had a huge, you know, a lot happened for you between 18 and 21.
That's right.
Between when you set out to do that and when you went to CAP.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, you know, looking back, I would have just like, I don't know, moved to Vancouver at 17 instead, or, you know, not gone to Bible college or anything like that. But I think those years between high school and like 20 is like, you're expected to grow up really fast in a short amount of time, and you almost kind of need that intense push forward because you can't be acting like you were in high school in your 20s, and a lot of people still do.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't get a lot of stuff done. And I think, you know, that, you know, like post-secondary is it's just pushed on us when we're so young that we have to know what we're going to do and all these things. And then we have burnout because if you've been in school for 13 years, K to 12, and you don't have a minute to breathe and figure out yourself and like learn like certain behaviors to do or not to do, like you're just going to like carry all your stuff with you. Like, and then we wonder as adults why we're so stressed and why we carry stuff in our bodies and why our backs hurt. It's because we never get a moment. Like, why do people in their like 30s or 40s be like, I need to go like on stress leave, or I need to take sabbatical later on, you know, or do all these things? It's because they've been carrying a lot of experiences they haven't been able to process. So yeah, there's a lot there, and you don't really know anything about that at that age. It does come for some people, some of those things at that age. It did come for me. You know, I
I had definite like alcohol abuse in like age 19, 20, like after I left Cap. So yeah, it comes for people at different times. But yeah, that's it. I mean, everybody grows so much in that age, but it struck me that you had your own version of that, and that matched when you brought it up, like in terms of Cap. For me, it's like that's a big thing that I've thought about since now that I'm pushing 30, and it's like, you can look back on that, and you can look back on it in a healthier way and not be so worried about like, oh, what happened to me or anything. Cause like, you're in a new place now and you're rolling and it's okay. But yeah, it's funny how hard that was for me at that age, at that time, and how not ready I was for it. But I left the scene to go play like folk rock music in a band that I started with my friend Gabrielle. I met him. My whole like life changed in 2016 when I met Gabrielle, and I met Vez like right around the same time in the spring of 2016. And then I started a band with Gabrielle and these other folk people that I knew, and I played with them for a good 3 years up until COVID. And then that was the end of the band right there when COVID started for me. So when I was looking for things to do, then that's kind of when Rhythm Changes started. It was like, well, I want to come back. I want to participate again. So how can I participate? Well, I'm going to start like talking to people and writing about things. And so that's kind of how that started. But I left and I didn't talk to most of the people in the scene for a good, 2015 to 2020.
Yeah.
And then kind of started coming back into it. And I used to think during that time that like, oh, I'll never be able to come back. Like you'll never have that welcome or whatever. Like I kind of fucked it up or whatever, and I wouldn't be able to. But of course you can, right? So
yeah. My question about that is, was it like an opinion of the self? Like I don't feel like I can come back just because there's so much time that's passed, or was it like kind of an external thing where it's like I don't know if I'll be welcomed back, or like where does that feeling come from?
Well, and I think that it's not entirely external. Like I was feeling like it was an external thing that I wouldn't be welcomed back. And there were some bad things that happened, but I mean, it's certainly clear now when you look back on it, like that I didn't really have a lot of evidence for that. Like it was just something that had kind of built up internally, even though I felt like there was something wrong that had happened and that I wouldn't be welcomed back. I couldn't like really, there wasn't anything there really. Like I just kind of let it get to me, and I just kind of carried it around until it was
That's
like,
fair, though.
At that COVID time, everybody got a chance to try something different. And so at that point, it made sense. And, I was 25 years old instead of whatever age that. So you got a little bit more confidence and things like that to go back and try things again. And there were so many people who I'd never met before. So that was great too. Yeah.
Lots of new people. Who are the people that you're really excited about the fact that you've met since COVID?
There's so
obviously
many.
Me.
Yeah.
Obviously Gordy.
Yeah. Obviously you. That was the very first thing I was going to say. Yeah, you and Gordy and all the people that have come along with. You are both such representatives of that when I think about it, because you play so often, and I hear a lot of them, and all the people that I've been exposed to through your leadership, honestly, because like when you're leading the projects creatively and when you're bringing the people together, that's how I end up getting exposed to some of the, like I play with Todd now, right? Like, of course, I heard him playing with you first, right? And with maybe with Gordy too, possibly, but definitely with you, I would have heard him for the first time, and now I play with him. So that's a great example of that. Alvin Brendan and Francis Henson, I've played with both of them.
Yep.
I got to know them around this time too. So yeah, and then there's still like every month I feel like there's one or two more people who I meet, and they're maybe like current Cap students now, or they're coming up, or somebody like for example Erica Chow, like I played with last year for the first time, and it's like wow, there you go, like there's all these there's so many. But then there's still people who I've known since the old times, like we're tonight when we're recording is the After Dark, which is like my three best friends in the scene, like Madeline Elkins, Chad Galvin, Carson Toro, all playing together. So have to go to that one. Nebu's here again after he was in Toronto for 10 years. Who are the other people who have been around the whole time? Like Ardashir, Parker Woods, he plays with Cole sometimes. He was around back in the day. Thad, obviously I've played with him so many times. Yeah. So there's still people from before, and then there's people from now. Yeah.
That's nice. Okay, one more question I have for you.
I like the turning the tables. It's good.
Yeah, this is fun. So it's interesting because when you felt like you wanted to come back to the scene, you felt like, okay, I want to come back. I feel ready. I'm good. And you're like, how do I kind of, I guess, like bring a gift with me? And then that's Rhythm Changes, because you have like such a good skill and such like a way of not only like including everyone in what you're doing, but also you're kind of a standalone in like music journalism in this way. In our scene, I'm probably not very educated. Maybe there is someone else. But like when I think of like who's writing all these articles and who's like keeping us all in the know, like I think of you as well.
Thank you.
And how does it feel to have somebody working under you? Todd. Like you have another worker.
Yeah. Feels great. Well, first of all, that's a very generous interpretation of Rhythm Changes. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's true.
It took a long time before it was anything resembling that. There was like a year and a half walk in the wilderness of Rhythm Changes before the gig list existed. So it definitely didn't start out as bringing any concept of bringing a gift to anybody. It was definitely just something to mess around with and to try doing. But I like to look for things that I don't think other people are doing.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason how I came to each part of Rhythm Changes. That's part of the reason how I came to focusing a lot on interviewing people, because, and not just things that, you know, there's not that many of these things that have never been done before. You know, what did somebody do before and it's not being done now?
Mm-hmm.
You know, New to Dune is a person who
Yeah.
did a lot of these things before and is at a different point in his life now and isn't doing them now. And there's so much that he did that I was able to just look back at and learn from. You know, he effectively did a gig list sort of hybrid of
that's
a lot
true,
of what Rhythm
actually.
Changes is that he was sending out, and he was involved in starting the gig list. You know, it was the people who put the gig list together were New and Tim and Rory Hislop, right? So, you know, they kind of brought the idea to me and it was ready to go.
Mhm.
And all I had to do was just kind of accept the idea. So, he was doing that.
Did New also do some of the, I think it's like, I don't remember exactly what it's called, but there's like the Vancouver Jazz Forum that hasn't been active really in the last couple of years.
Yeah, he was
involved
one
in
of the
that?
people. Him and Brian Nation, this guy was one of the, I don't know if you ever met him. Yeah. I have met him, but I don't really know him, and he's still around and people here know him. So I would love to, you know, when there is a chance to connect with him, I will look for it. But yeah, he's older even than New too, but he created that website, and New was one of the people who was involved in it. But at that time, you know, there was so much of like a fresh start aspect to that COVID time. So it's like, okay, people used to interview people here, and there was a lot of it that I could look back and I could learn what the scene was like in the late 90s pretty well, because it was covered. Nobody's doing that now. Okay, I'll try doing that now. Nobody is doing, everybody and their dog was starting a podcast in 2021.
Yep.
Nobody was starting one in this community, so I'm going to do one. New used to do the gig list, so nobody's doing it now, so I'm going to start doing that. I was just looking for kind of open areas or vacated areas, I guess. And it's just come from that, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm just happy. I'm just going to try and keep doing it and not drop the ball and enjoy the ride. So
I love it. It's a good ride.
Yeah.
We're on the ride with you.
You asked about Todd, right? Because
Yes.
he's written and he's right around the time that this comes out, he's dropping something that's like his Jazzfest recap. So no, in terms of having contributors, they're always welcome. Like the limit on the number of contributors there are is not how many I'm willing to have. It's just how much interest there is out there from other people who are interested in doing it. So I really appreciate the people who have been so far. There's Todd. There's like Isabel Leong, Karen Plato, you know, from a different generation. There's obviously Chris Fraser. He drops a 3,000 word banger once a year.
Whoa!
That's kind of what he does. He did one on the Kevin Romaine Salience Network album release and the All City show. That was his last year's edition of that. There's room for more contributors. They're welcome. It just depends on who has time for it, who's interested, that kind of thing. So I'm always happy to have contributors. I'd have one every week if there was enough interest.
I'm glad you mentioned the names of other people who are doing it, because I didn't really know that anyone else other than Todd, just because Todd and I are so close.
Yeah.
I know he works and does some stuff for Rhythm Changes. So now I'm going to go look for like Karen and Isabel.
Yeah. You gotta... This is not entirely a contributor. It's more of like a long form interview, but the best one of that I can remember recently that I think you will find interesting if you haven't come across it yet is the big chat I had with David Blake where he tells the story of the tangent ownership change.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a good one.
Okay.
More things like that. That's another kind of cool angle to it. Like Jamie Lee wrote about the year that she took away from music and how she ended up in her new career of game audio.
Yes, I've read that
Those
one.
kind of contributions are also really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
There's just too many stories and not enough time, right?
That's
so
true.
that's the issue, right? That we're trying to get after here is we want to document it for the future, but we also want to do something to promote it here and now, obviously, because that's an interest level for all the people I talk to. So there's a balance there, but I think that part of it is pretty apparent to you as well, where you can look back at so many communities and think about how little of it ended up being documented and how that's kind of a shame. And
it's just really upsetting, actually.
Yes. And there's always going to be more opportunities to like make that happen now, such that you have it down the road, then you can pull off. So
True.
You're just trying to do that. And that's the main motivation now. Like, other than just me personally, I just say, well, this is the way I like to participate because I don't play as often as you or as other people. And this is the main way that I can be a part of the scene. But really, that's such a big thing about it for me is I want that we know, I want us to have it later, like to feel like it was documented and stuff. And so I don't need to be the only person doing that. So that's why contributors are great and why I'm trying to do it. Yeah, that's a big motivation.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have you said oh that's upsetting and that's a significant kind of feeling that when we're talking about this right now, or when I'm saying that right now, what are you thinking of? What communities are you thinking of?
I'm thinking of just like lost knowledge. Like, oh man, I actually thought like 10 different thoughts. Here, I'll walk you through them. I thought about the concept of a family tree and knowing your history, but also knowing your communal history. I thought about how you're mentioning like Nuda Dune, like all the contributions he's been doing, and like his I think it's called A Train, his radio show.
Yeah.
And like the documentation he does on air. I think about rhythm changes and how like we have the internet in this episode and all other episodes you've done, and things you've written will be accessible if people just know where to look, or we'll keep it circulating, and I think about, so funny, I actually think about how a lot of white people don't know where they're from. And then like all of these things. And then I thought about, I have ADHD, so I think like 10 thoughts all the time.
That's
and then
okay.
I thought about how UBC has has an archival program. And then I thought about how Jared Burrows has been digitizing a lot of Now Society records.
That's right, with Nikita Carter, and there's like a CapU webpage thing where they're I remember when that happened. Yeah. They're adding to it.
This is kind of like crucial work because, how are you going to know what was here? How are you going to know who came before you? And how are you going to know what can inform you as a person or anything? How will you know anything if it's not available or if it's not proven to have existed? Then you're just like making stuff up, I guess.
Yeah.
No context.
I have a really low stakes example, but it is an example of this phenomenon. Last year, and probably since 2 years ago, I've tried to go to every new series launch, especially every new Infidel series launch. I try to go to the first one and write an article about it. So take something like Chill X, right? I probably went to every Chill X show, and I probably wrote about almost all of them. Just because I played one of them, so I didn't do that one. And I think I wrote about almost all the other ones, including the first one. There only ended up being like 5 shows. Now it's gone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I got it.
Exactly.
And then there's some other series that, only last a little while. And I also like Painted Ship or whatever the Infidel series there that I caught. But then there's like, I also did the first one at Heroes. Mm-hmm. And now Heroes is 2 or 3 times bigger than what that was when I started there.
With a jam too.
Yeah. That started too. And so I've always tried to catch the first one. And then you don't know which are going to survive or how long they're going to survive.
That's the thing.
So that's sort of an example of this. But like in terms of people, that's when yeah, it becomes really meaningful because I just visited my Chernoff family, my dad's side of the family yesterday. I was in Victoria. My dad's grandparents are still with us. My mom's aren't,
Wow.
but I was with my dad and my grandparents yesterday.
So your great grandparents, your dad's grandparents?
No, my dad's parents, my grandparents.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And we were together in Victoria yesterday, and my dad lives on Galliano, and he has a book in his living room that was like passed down through our family, because my dad's family is like, the heritage is the Doukhobor kind of sub Russian ethnic group that came to Canada around like 1899 to 1910. And there's like a book about the families that lived in these certain towns in Saskatchewan at the time.
Whoa.
And it's not like fancy stuff. Like, it's tiny little black and white photos, and it's people's names, and it's like maybe what they did or when they came and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But even just that amount of information, as you were saying, so many people don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't know about it unless somebody had documented it that way, or unless I somehow could take the initiative to like proactively ask I did have a great grandfather who was alive when I was alive. And so I did get to chat with him a little bit.
That's crazy.
But I was like a little kid, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
unless you get to ask people like that specific questions, then it doesn't get documented.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess luckily I know a little bit about things like that. But yeah, it's not, and there's a lot I don't know, and a lot of times people don't know.
Yeah. That's also a thing. A lot of times people don't know. Or like you were saying, they know like a little bit, but that little bit is a lot as compared to someone who doesn't know.
Yeah.
And how are you going to find your place in this world? Not to sound like an old person who's like, you should always know where you're from, because, we also live busy lives. We can't just spend time thinking about culture and family all the time. I was about to make a joke, but it's not a good joke to make. So I was going to say that's what old people do. But guess what? We're getting older. So that's us now. And it's crucial to know where you fit in this world. And what you can bring to the table is the stuff that also lies in your blood. Like I met one of my uncles in DC in October because I heard he was really sick, and he wasn't. I just have a really big family on my dad's side, and just went through the grapevine too many times that it was like, he's really sick. But it was like, actually, he just broke his foot and he's 80. Like,
yeah.
But I went, and he was telling me all about how he was in the Eritrean Air Force, and they spent a year training in the U.S., and he saw Mahalia Jackson in the 60s playing in New Orleans. And
wow.
and learning all of these like family stories, because he's the story keeper in our family. I didn't know that. I just knew, ask your Uncle Taya all this stuff. And I go and I ask him, and I get like hours worth of recordings. So hearing these tales that people did, or seeing pictures of them and being like, yo, I have your nose or something, it gives you context. You don't feel so lost. You have confidence.
Yeah.
So, is that how you feel? A little bit?
That I have the confidence for having it. Well,
yeah, you got
only
a picture,
sort
you got
of
names.
Yes, there is more there than a lot of people have, and that's really great. But that is only one side of my family. On the other side, I don't have as much.
That's tough.
I have some things, and the things that I do know, I just kind of have been exposed to them, and I didn't have any deep engagement. Like this is a little morbid, but like I know I'm going to like read the eulogies of all 4 of my grandparents, because I've already done 2.
Yeah.
Because my family's pretty small. Like my immediate and like first cousins and stuff is very, very small. There's only a few of us. But like at the funeral of my grandpa on my mom's side, of my mom's dad, he was French Canadian, and I read out these names of like the line of like 13 guys' names that have been in Canada since 1604 settling or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but that's just like names on names
true.
on a piece of paper to me at that point that I hadn't seen before. And so, I can look at one side of my family. It's like, yeah, I know something. And like my grandparents are still alive. And so that connection feels vital to me. Then I can look at the other side and it can be like, well, that's tough. I really don't know anything, and that I don't feel as whole there on that side really. So it's a mixed bag.
Yeah. Yeah. I can empathize. I don't have a lot of close family relations, so I'm just learning and hearing things. So I get it. It's weird because it's like you can access records online and stuff like through like 23andMe or like Ancestry, but they don't tell you a lot of personal stuff.
Yeah, they'll tell you you're this percentage of coming from this area of the world, and it's like, what does that really do for me? Yeah,
and it's like, you're gonna tell me people that knew these people too, or like you're gonna find a diary for me or something? Like, yeah. There's some mixed and feelings with that, and some missed areas too.
One thing I do enjoy is like, because I have on my dad's side, I have this heritage of a very particular ethnic group in Canada. Like there's everybody with like my last name or a certain last name is like traceably related to me. And so you can always have some funny kind of conversations about that. Like actually at the Jazzfest on the Saturday, or whichever day Jason Winikoff played. And he also has a similar last name to me, but that comes from a different heritage. I don't think he's the same people as me, but because I would have loved to have done an episode with him and heard it from him, but I think he has like a Jewish heritage to some extent.
I think he is Jewish.
Yeah, so the names can be similar at that. They can have similar like Slavic roots at that point. So he's not coming out of exactly the same. But I was chit-chatting with one of the like volunteers who was like stationed by like the waste bins and the info sign for Coastal. He was this young guy, and I was just chatting him up about like, oh, is it gonna rain? And it did rain a little bit and stuff. And he's like, oh, I don't think so. And then because I was wearing my Rhythm Changes pass, and he was like, oh, your last name's Chernoff. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, mine is too. And this guy's name is like John Chernoff. And we didn't get to trace it all down, but it's like, but I always ask when I see like the Duke of War names or whatever, I'm like, did you grow up in BC or Saskatchewan? Because there's a split where the community kind of migrated to like, what's now like Castlegar and Grand Forks, BC, and the Kootenays, right? My folks didn't do that. They stayed in Saskatchewan, and then my dad's parents moved to BC when they were raising their kids, right? Like as they were trying to be like modern people or whatever what that means at that point. But I didn't get to trace it all down with him, but I know I could. Like I know I could find where we're related or something.
That's special.
Yeah.
How does it feel to have like random distant cousins walking around you that are like they can tell you stuff? How does that feel?
It feels good. It feels good. Yeah, I don't have to qualify it. I have a tendency to like feel guilty about something if I like didn't take the initiative to explore it enough or whatever I think that means. Or you don't have to chase down every single thing. No, it feels good.
You also have like, God willing, like 80 more years. Yes. Lots of time.
Yeah.
I wish you luck. I shake your hand.
Thank you. I'm just glad I was able to reach you because we're sitting for the microphones. We were sitting pretty far there. That was a good move.
That was a gamble, but we did it. We shook hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've come a long way from it's been a fun adventure, this chat.
Yeah, it has.
That we've come a long way from your gigs to all this kind of thing. And it could continue, and it will continue, and doesn't all have to continue on the mic. So
True.
it'll continue over, like you said, hopefully a long period of time.
Yeah.
Is to close, I guess one of the things that I would ask is, I ask a lot of people about how they feel about being here, or like thinking about places and destinations, stuff like that. Like I asked that to Biboye, which you can hear. I was like, how at home do you feel in Edmonton? He talked about different places that he lived and he grew up in and stuff too, and that was interesting. Everybody has their own journey with this. We have musician friends who relocate. We have a lot of people who think about it, are thinking about it. What do you want to say about where you find yourself in terms of that?
Well, I find myself living on a block on Main Street in which I have, in front of the roundabout at the end of my street, which is maybe 20 meters, not even, I have townhouses that just was built, and the sign says ready to move in now, 2 and 3 bedrooms starting at 1.2 million. You turn to the left of that and you walk about 20 meters and there's a development reapplication or whatever development sign being like, we're going to make condos here. A new one popped up. There's one behind on the other side of the alley. There's like a really nice apartment building that has redevelopment application on it. And yeah, there was another one that just popped up, but it's slowly starting to close in on my street because I'm part of the Broadway expansion plan within 800 meters of all directions of where the train is supposed to be. I believe that's what it is.
Because you're in like Mount Pleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin's my neighbor, actually.
Yeah.
And it's closing in on us. So soon, the city won't even want us. Like, at this point, it's less even, do we want to be here? And it's like, can we afford to be here? Because, like, while I'm blessed with affordable rent, I can't afford anything on my street. I can't, like, continuously go to Save On and, like, blow, like, $145 on groceries. Like, I can't do that, you know? And it's like having to switch the mindset of like thrival to almost survival. And so that really, it kind of, you know, it depresses one. It depresses a person because of it. And I've had so many friends that have like moved away because the culture that I was catching when I got here in 2016 was the tail end of like a huge cultural arc that now half of these people are in Montreal or in Toronto or have moved to Europe or all these things. So it's pretty bleak. And I think I know I'm leaving soon.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, soon could mean a lot of different things. So I'm sure there's a lot of that's still up in the air. For any given person, yeah, there's this feeling of like, I'm feeling lucky that not that you're still here necessarily, but that, you know, that soon can still be indefinite and that it hasn't, you know, been forced upon someone yet. So I'm feeling lucky that you're in that situation, you know, and that you've made so much incredible music here this year.
Thanks.
And I hope that soon is not that soon, and that will continue for however long it does, you know. But yeah. Is there anything or anyone else, without having to like go exhaustively, you don't have to name every single name, but that you want to shout out or bring up here before we finish that might be on your mind?
Oh yeah. Shout out Corey Weeds. He's cool. I'm looking forward to working with him in the future.
Nice.
Shout out Nebu. I love you.
Absolutely.
Shout out to Chris Fraser. He lives on my street. Shout out to Kevin and Andromeda. They live on my street too. Shout out my neighbors. Shout out the Ethiopian community. You know. Shout out Aksum Ethiopian restaurant. Shout out Todd. You know. Yoro Nukusi has a show coming up. Frankie's After Dark. Yes,
Frankie's After Dark. This will come out before then, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on August. August. Sorry, yeah. I'm scrolling in the phone.
That's okay, because there's something else I want to go back to as well that I didn't get to that you brought up. Yeah.
Yeah, August 3rd, 11 p.m. If any of you guys came to my show at VIF in February for the Max Roach Sextet and Movie Show, he was the dude who played auxiliary percussion at the end.
Yes.
And his group is called Yoro Nukusi and the African Masters.
It's going to be great.
I think his son is on that, Yato.
Yeah, he follows the Rhythm Changes account. Yeah, I know who that is.
Yato's dope. Yeah, they're from like a specific tribe in Benin that has like, they have a drum in their family that they've had for 500 years. They're all drummers.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good plug. That's a good show. I look forward to that one. What I realized I didn't get to is your music with Andromeda Monk.
Woo!
Because, and I've seen it billed as like Magic Maze or Mini Maze, which is maybe like just you two. Yeah, something like that. But sometimes I edit these backwards in time, but no, I'm going to leave this one here. Just talk about that project because we didn't get there.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. So Andromeda and I started playing a lot through like 8 East. We used to be in a sextet that had Lucy Strauss on viola and Natasha Zerno on clarinet, as well as I was the bass player. She was on I think she was on no input mixer at the time and some synthesizer too. Matt Ariaratnam on guitar and Adrian Avadaniel on drums. So that was our crew. I don't even know how we came together, like, but we just started kind of like playing and hanging, and then realized it was like so easy. We didn't even have to think when we played with each other. It was just like seamless synergy. Natasha is no longer playing with us. I think she's busy doing a lot of work with China Cloud and stuff right now. And then Lucy went to go do her, I believe, PhD at the university at a university in England. I'm not sure which one. So
Cool.
those two are no longer in our group. So it's just the four of us. And then Andromeda has made that mini maze. No, that's Magic Maze. Mini Maze is just me and her. That's Magic Maze. That's a lot of fun.
You did an After Dark.
We did, yes, as Mini Maze, which was just me and her.
Yeah.
Little synth duo. It's really easy to play with her. Like, we both have, when we play together, we both bring like bardcore and like medieval flavors to the mix. And I think we both enjoy that kind of music and playing with each other that way. And also just experimenting and making funny sounds. Beep, beep, boop, boop, that kind of stuff. One time, the two of us played with Dan Gaucher in Galliano.
Galliano at the Yellow House?
Oh my God. Yeah. At Oxeye.
Oh,
actually.
yes, at the restaurant, yeah.
And that was so good. I was on bass and she was on synth. Three of us were like, yeah, we got to make a record. Like, that's so cool. You know? So shout out to Dan Gaucher as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's cool. It's really just, I love playing with her. And it's kind of like we're on like two kids on a play date. It's two girls playing together.
What better vibe could you ask for any project?
I can't ask for nothing better. It's the best.
Well, thank you. This was a lot of fun. In the whole time that I've heard you play, you've been a big light for me and for a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you. Yo, one time I heard you play at Tyrant. It was a jam, and it was actually one of the first times I ever heard you play. I believe it was last summer. I don't even remember who I played with or how that went on. I played, and then you played second, and I sent a clip of that to Tim, and I was like, give Will a show now. So I really like your playing.
Oh, was that was like the improv jam?
I think it was.
We weren't like playing tunes, but I got up there and I played Cole's electric bass.
Yes.
Yeah, the red bass, and I played a free jam. I feel like Andromeda was there.
She was
as well. We played together. Yeah, I can't remember who was on drums. I don't want to get it wrong, but yeah, no, that was a fun memory from last year. That was like one of the new Tyrant things, I think.
That's what it was. New thing.
That was the first time I'd ever played free improv.
Huh? Really?
And it's still, honestly, it still is like the only time that I have. So
I gotta flex you. 1 minute. I'm looking for the recording. I'm putting it in the microphone. You have got to be kidding me. That was your first time?
Yeah, I mean Tim loves to roast me about that too. Like I didn't know anything about that side of the scene. I came up only in the Corey Weeds cellar straight ahead side of the scene. I knew Jody Prosnick, Steve Kolstad, Jesse Cahill. Still love all that stuff. All my knowledge about free jazz has come in this Rhythm Changes time, and it's very small. So
that's crazy.
Someday I'll feel a little bit more confident, but it's been a confidence journey to get to feel like I could play around in there, because I was a little intimidated by it for sure. Yeah.
Oh, you sounded like a natural. It was Andromeda on piano and Conrad on drums.
Conrad Agnes, the Swedish drummer. Yeah.
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 Let me play it.
Oh, the bass is turned up.
So good.
Wait, so you're in the audience. You're doing this on your phone. You're not playing
recording
this part of it yet. That you can't see the faces we're making.
Crazy.
That's hilarious.
I'm playing the full clip.
I don't even know how long it is.
I don't either.
That good old Tyrant piano.
All right, I'll call it there. Oh, it was at the end.
That's
All
what.
right. Well, yeah, we got it.
What is
Anyway.
even happening? That's hilarious.
Oh, I have another recording too. Yeah. Tim says the fact that Will and Andromeda played together makes me very happy. That's so cool.
Oh man.
Yeah, that was from July 3rd last year.
Wow. So right. Yeah. Okay. So that's right then. It was a new thing. I was like, oh, did that happen during the Jazzfest? But no, it was like it was like the next like new thing at Tyrant Studios that would happen after the Jazzfest. Wow.
Yeah.
So it was a year ago.
Happy
my gosh.
birthday to that recording.
Oh boy. Yeah. That's fun. Thank you.
Yeah, dude. That
Yeah.
was nice. I loved that.
I hope you have a great summer.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Rhythm Changes podcast. If you enjoyed it, become a member for free today at rhythmchanges.ca. Get the free weekly email where I send you artist events, recordings, content features, plus the week's upcoming events from the gig list. Rhythm Changes is a turn-off music production. This episode was hosted and produced by me, recorded at the Vancouver Public Library Central Branch, edited and mixed by Justin Gorey. And I will catch you next time. Let's go.